One morning, the narrow-gauge engines were getting ready for the day's work. Rheneas, Duncan, and Sir Handel were steaming nicely about ready to leave, while Rusty was filling up on fuel. Rheneas had been thinking about the olden days of when the railway was about to be closed down, and he and Skarloey had worked their hardest to keep it running. "You know, I was just thinking, I'm the most reliable engine on the railway." "Rubbish! We're all reliable." "But I'm the most reliable. You've all heard the stories about how before you all came, me and Skarloey—" We know! Skarloey told us the stories, but you don't need to be puffed up about it." Rheneas was cross. Apparently no one else appreciated the fact that he and Skarloey had once saved the day. Rheneas puffed away, cross. He collected some coaches and went to the station. Toby was there. "The other engines don't think I'm reliable." "Well then prove to them that you are reliable." "I will prove them wrong." The guard blew his whistle and Rheneas huffed out of the station. "Puffed up, they say. I'm not. I'm just proud." Rheneas chortled along the line. He soon arrived at the lakeside station. He waited as the passengers got out and enjoyed themselves for an hour. Then it was time to go. Rheneas began the journey home. Rheneas was puffing along the hillside when suddenly he had an ache in his boiler. Ah! The driver got out and inspected him. "Your boiler troubles look bad. We'll have to check it out when we get home. Can you make it?" Rheneas remembered a long time ago, back when he had saved the railway because he had kept going so he didn't disappoint the passengers. By now the passengers were wondering why they had stopped. Rheneas knew he couldn't disappoint them. He knew what he had to do, the same as what he had done before. "I'll get them home." Everyone got situated and Rheneas set off. He groaned in pain, but he didn't stop. "I can still do it. I can and I will. I can and I will." Rheneas huffed with all his might. Finally, tired and triumphant, he reached the big station. James was there. So was Sir Handel and Duncan. When Rheneas had stopped, he was relieved. "I did it again!" "Huh, still puffed up." Sir Handel and Duncan puffed away. The passengers cheered and thanked Rheneas before they left on James's train. The fitter came to inspect Rheneas. "You brought the train home by yourself?" "Yes, sir," Rheneas smiled proudly. The fitter looked very cross. "You should have stayed where you were. You have made this accident much worse. Now you'll have to stay in the works for at least twice as long." Rheneas wasn't smiling anymore. Now he was puffed up and puffed out. Finally, the great day came. All the little engines were gathered at the sheds. Toby and some of the other big engines were there too. Photographers and a crowd came to get a picture of the great event. Sir Topham Hatt and the manager stood waiting along with many other important people. Everyone was excited. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. Suddenly a signal turned red and everyone became anxious. There was a toot-toot of a whistle and everyone looked to see. "Here he comes!" Douglas with some flatbeds and a crane pulled in. On top of the flatbeds was a dark brown narrow-gauge tender engine. Everyone cheered when they saw him. It was Bertram the Old Warrior. Once Douglas arrived, Sir Topham Hatt stood to speak to everyone. "Welcome, welcome. You've all come to welcome the return of a great engine who was found by myself, my wife, my grandchildren, and with Toby and Henrietta. This engine has now been repaired so he can return to work at the newly restored quarry that he was found at." Everyone cheered. "Now together let us celebrate the return of this great engine." All the visitors went off to celebrate while the engine stayed by the sheds. Skarloey, Sir Handel, and Rusty were quick to warmly welcome him to the railway, although they did not know him too well. However, Rheneas, Peter, Sam, and Duncan eyed the newcomer doubtfully. Meanwhile, Duke had fallen asleep while everyone was waiting for Douglas to bring Bertram. Duncan didn't like that Bertram was getting a party for his return. How come Duncan never got a party? Duncan decided he was going to put the new engine in his place. "So you're Bertram?" "Yes, I am." "Well, Bertram, do you know if the quarry's haunted?" Bertram was surprised at such an odd question. No. Why do you ask?" "Well, I think a ghost has been haunting it." The engines all went silent. Their attention was on Duncan. "During the night shift sometimes, I'll be shunting trucks or sitting in the shed at the quarry when I see this man. The man always comes towards me like he's going to climb into me and drive me away. But my driver shows up and shines his lantern out and the man vanishes." The little engines were in awe, even Bertram. "I've heard before of a phantom haunting the old quarry, but I never saw anything before." "It's been said that a man was working when one of the quarry buildings started on fire. The man went inside to rescue his fellow co-workers, but he was burned and didn't make it out trying to save them. Because of his heroic efforts, he saved many lives. They call him the Old Warrior, and they named me in honor of him. That's why I have the nickname the Old Warrior." Duncan had made the whole haunting thing up, and everyone believed it, even Bertram. Duncan was surprised that no one had questioned it at all. Finally, Bertram was lifted off the flatbed and onto the rails. He went back home to the restored quarry. That night, Duncan's driver had left some paperwork at the quarry. Duncan convinced him that they should go back and get it. So Duncan went to the quarry. Bertram had spent most of the day after the celebration doing some shunting at the quarry and was tired. He was ready to go to sleep. When Duncan arrived at the quarry, he stopped behind Bertram quietly. Duncan's driver went to the building to pick up the paperwork. After a few minutes, Duncan saw his driver leaving the building. "Bertram, wake up!" Bertram was half asleep and very confused. He opened his sleepy eyes and saw a man walking towards him. The Old Warrior!" Duncan laughed. Bertram was so scared he accidentally released his brakes. Oh! Duncan had broken through some buffers, and his own buffer beam was now bent. Oh! Duncan, is that you? What are you doing here? Duncan felt terrible for what he had done. "I was trying to trick you with my ghost story and make you look silly. But now look how silly I look. I'm sorry, Bertram." "It's all right. You made me laugh." Duncan's driver ran up to inspect the damage. In the morning, they put Duncan back on the rails. Then they sent Duncan to the works to get his buffers mended. Bertram and Duncan are now good friends. They both are hard-working engines, and both enjoy having some fun with one another. One day, Skarloey and Peter Sam were stuck in the shed. All the other engines were busy with work. The manager told them to stay in the shed. The two little engines were very bored. "This is boring. There's nothing to do here." Skarloey agreed. Other engines, big and small, passed by with their day's work. Skarloey wished that he could go out and work. It was very boring waiting in the shed. Finally, the yard foreman came up. "Skarloey, Peter Sam, I need you to shunt a train for Duke that he will take up to the top station. I've given your drivers the specifics. Good luck." And with that, the foreman left. The two little engines got to work. Soon enough, they got the train shunted together. It was a very small train with only 3 wagons in it. Peter Sam came up with an idea. He whispered it to Skarloey. Skarloey laughed and agreed. So he and Peter Sam shunted as many wagons as they could to the train. They worked very hard, and by the time Duke showed up, the train was very long. Duke was in a grumpy mood today. "Come on, come on!" The shunter coupled Duke to the long train. Skarloey and Peter Sam sat in the shed smiling. They snickered quietly to each other. Duke tried to pull the train, but all the heavy wagons held him back. Duke couldn't even move forward. The coupling began to strain. Duke pulled with all his might. The two little engines watched and laughed. Suddenly, the coupling broke and Duke rocketed forward right into a slate truck. Skarloey and Peter Sam were worried. Their little prank had caused an accident. Instead of being angry, Duke started to laugh. Peter Sam and Skarloey were very confused. They came up to see if Duke was all right. Duke was still laughing. "Did you do this?" Yes?" "Well, do I have a story to tell you?" Soon Rusty came with some workmen, and they cleaned up the mess. Duncan took Duke's train, and the little engines gathered to hear Duke's story. "So a long time ago, back on my old railway, even before Stewart and Falcon came to the railway, there was only me and one other engine for the longest time. His name was Smudger." Peter Sam chuckled. He had heard stories about Smudger before. "Smudger was difficult. He wouldn't do his work right and he often came off the rails. I told him to stop, but he would just get mad at me." "Grandpuff, you already told us these stories." "Oh, not this part of the story. This was before he got turned into a generator." "A generator?" "That's right. I'll explain that later. So Smudger wanted to pay me out. He came up with his own plan, too. One day, the manager asked me to take a long train of supplies up the mountain. Smudger shunted the train together. Smudger hated shunting, especially if it was for me. So we got the train together, and for his plan, he coupled it up to a long line of freight cars. I didn't know this, and when I was coupled up, I could see Smudger snickering in a siding. I didn't think much of it. So I began to pull the train, but I couldn't pull the heavy freight cars. Then, just like earlier today, the coupling broke. I shot forward, I went into Smudger's siding, and ran into him. He wasn't laughing then." "How awful. Sounds to me like he deserved it. So what happened to Smudger? Why did he get turned into a generator?" "I'll save that story for another day. But thank you for reminding me today about the fun memory. Just don't be too careless like Smudger, otherwise you might end up being a generator." And with that, Duke puffed away. Trevor the traction engine works at the vicarage orchard on Edward's branch line. He is old and has worked there for many years. The vicarage orchard did not always have very much work for Trevor, but the vicar had discovered a new kind of fertilizer that has made production in the orchard increase rapidly. Trevor was now busier than ever. Trevor loves all the work, but it can get tiring after a long time. Even so, Trevor still went about his work. Early one morning, the vicar came to see him. "Morning, Trevor." "Hello." Trevor noticed a new lorry sitting next to the vicar. "This is our new lorry." "Oh, hello." "This lorry is going to help us take goods to Wellsworth and back." "But, sir, that's one of my favorite jobs." "I know, but you have been very busy, and now you will be able to do more work here." Trevor was sad. He liked taking goods to the market. That was where he would see Edward and Boko. The vicar climbed into the lorry and drove away. Trevor was sad, but he continued doing his work. Later, Trevor saw the lorry being filled with apples to go to market. Trevor watched the lorry. "What do you want?" I don't have time for museum antiques like you." Trevor was shocked. "You're in my way," and the lorry drove off. Trevor was offended by what the lorry had said. Later that day, Trevor was sitting in the field looking sad. He heard a whistle and Edward pulled up. "Hello, Trevor. Why do you look so glum?" Trevor sighed. "The vicar brought a lorry to help me with all the work, but the lorry is very rude to me." Edward felt bad for his friend, but there was nothing he could do to help. A workman took a cow out of Edward's cattle car, and Edward now had to leave. "Goodbye, Trevor. I wish I could help. Hope you solve your lorry problems soon." Trevor was still glum. He looked over and saw a cart of apples. "I wonder, if I take the apples to Wellsworth, then the vicar will realize he doesn't need the lorry to help out. Oh, yes. Then he will send the lorry away and I don't have to deal with him." Trevor talked to his driver and was coupled to the cart. He headed off to Wellsworth. Soon Trevor reached a crossing. He began to move across, but the cart's wheels got stuck. "Oh dear." Suddenly Trevor heard a whoop whoop. "Oh no! It's Gordon!" Gordon was on his way to Vicarstown with the express. He was going very fast. "Come on!" Trevor saw Gordon in the distance. Trevor pulled with all his strength. Finally the wheel snapped off the cart and Trevor yanked it forward off the crossing. Oh, what luck! After resting a few minutes, he tried to move forward, but he couldn't. One of his valves had snapped and he was stuck. His driver telephoned for help. Butch was busy, so Percy brought the breakdown train in a truck to the crossing. Trevor was loaded on the flatbed, and the apples were loaded into his truck. Then Percy took Trevor to the works and delivered the apples to Wellsworth Station. Later, the vicar came to see Trevor at the works. He didn't look very happy. "Trevor, you were supposed to stay at the orchard and not deliver the apples. That was the new lorry's job." "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. That horrid lorry was rude to me, and I didn't like him doing my work. I just thought that if I could prove to you that I didn't need his help, you would send him away." The vicar laughed. The Lorry isn't here to stay permanently. I only rented him for the season. Trevor was relieved. Oh, thank goodness. The little traction engine smiled. Duke has lived on Sodor for many years. He may be an old engine, but he is very reliable. He always tries to do what's right. When other engines do things that are not considered right, Duke always says to them, "That would never suit his grace." Duke loves keeping the little engines like Peter, Sam, and Sir Handel in order. One morning, Peter Sam was resting at a station. Duke was taking a long train and came slowly by, trying to make it to the water tower. Poor old Grandpuff, you're still worn out. Nothing of the sort. It's too early in the day for me. Duke filled up on water and left. Peter Sam is fond of Duke, but he loves to tease him like he used to. Peter Sam headed down the line. Later, Peter Sam shunted the coaches away. Duke was resting in the shed. Peter Sam puffed up by Duke. Taking another rest? If you take any more breaks, we might as well put you in a museum. Be off! I've had enough of your jokes for one day. Peter Sam scampered off to go work at the slate mines. Skarloey pulled up beside Duke. It's alright, he's just teasing. I know Peter Sam has gotten older, but he's still as cheeky as a youngster. Skarloey chuckled and puffed away. That night, Sir Topham Hatt came to see all the engines. I have some very important news. A special visitor will be coming tomorrow. She has requested a very special train. All the engines were excited. They wondered about who would get to pull the important train. The important visitor has heard fascinating stories about Duke the Lost Engine, so she would like to have Duke pull her train. The other engines were disappointed, except for Skarloey. Congratulations, Duke! But Duke didn't hear him. Duke had fallen asleep. I'll just have his driver inform him in the morning. And then he left. There he goes with his naps again. The next morning, Duke woke up. His driver informed him about his special job. All the other engines were busy with work. Rusty rolled up with Nancy, the conductor's daughter. She hopped out of Rusty. Morning, Duke. Ready to get polished for your special train? Yes, I am. Thank you. Nancy got out a bucket of soapy water and a sponge and started scrubbing. Back in my day, we didn't have special trains. We just did our work. None of this fancy, silly stuff with specials. Oh, but it makes things much more fun. It's a waste of time, if you ask me. As Nancy continued scrubbing, Duke looked at a red coach ahead. Is that the coach I'm taking? Yes, it is. It's a special coach for your special job. Duke rolled his eyes. What a stupid word. Special. Workmen were washing the coach down, making sure it was ready for the train. Duke simmered happily in the sun as Nancy continued scrubbing him down. Soon Rusty pulled up. Nancy, your father needs you back at the station right away. So Nancy hurried into Rusty's cab, and Rusty drove away. What Nancy didn't realize was that she had left the bucket of soapy water on the tracks. Duke's driver arrived and climbed in his cab. The fireman stoked the fire and Duke was ready to go. His driver released the brake, and Duke started moving forward. Stop! 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 Duke hit the bucket. It splashed dirty water all over him. His crew got out and inspected him for any damages. You can't pull the train. You're not suited for the job. "Duke, you just kicked the bucket!" The driver and fireman laughed. Everyone thought it was funny that Duke had kicked the bucket. Peter Sam pulled up. He was laughing too, but he could see that Duke really wanted to take the train. So Peter Sam raced away to find Nancy. Peter Sam pulled into the big station. He told Nancy what had happened. Nancy climbed into Peter Sam and they raced back to the sheds. Nancy cleaned Duke all over again as quick as she could. This time, though, she remembered not to leave the bucket on the tracks. Once Duke was clean, he collected the coach and he went to take his special train. Later that day, when Duke got back, Nancy came to see him. "I heard you kicked the bucket today." Duke rolled his eyes. Peter Sam laughed. "He couldn't have. Grandpuff goes on forever." Even Duke had to smile at that. Hello, I'm Diesel261. If you enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button to subscribe for more Thomas and Friends videos. You can also check out more videos on our YouTube channel by clicking the Visit Channel button. If you want to learn more about the up-and-coming latest adventures from Sodor, and to find out about the latest updates, then click the News Blog button. You can also check out the Google Plus and our Facebook page by clicking a link in the description. We hope to see you again soon. Come back often for more videos.